Okay, so welcome to another video. The idea of this one, obvious from the title, and probably if you found this video, it's because you put in something similar to the question, right? Like, why the heck is your advisor, I don't know, ignoring you? Or why didn't they spend more time on your paper? Or why aren't they giving you better ideas? Or why is it that they tell you something and you do it and you come back to them and they don't remember the thing that they told you because they're just working on so many other things, right? I'm approaching this mainly from a utilitarian perspective. I am going to try to give you the explanation that I think for the average person is going to do the most benefit. I'm saying that up front because there could be little things in your situation that are different. Like most of the things I'm going to tell you are not things you're ever going to take to your advisor. They're things you're going to do yourself. In some cases, there's things you could do with your advisor that maybe would really help. Like you might have an advisor that would be super receptive to a conversation where you try to critique their advising style. Um, I think that's not the average case. And so I'm going to give advice that I find personally pragmatic. I'm going to give advice that I've seen be effective, both for myself and for others. But your mileage may vary. And if you think that something's a great idea, just do it. Like, what's the worst that can happen? You make your advisor mad? I mean, it's not a great idea. But, like, don't say I didn't warn you, right? Okay, so your advisor doesn't have more time for you. I personally think there are lots of good reasons for them not to have more time for you or not to give you more of their time. And I guess so we're going to start off with kind of like the tough love perspective. Like, why doesn't your advisor give you more time? You might not deserve their time. And what do I mean by that? Like, in a perfect world, your advisor might be somebody with incredibly high emotional intelligence, right? And they're like super in tune with your feelings. And they're like, okay, like Matt's struggling, but he's struggling because, and they try to put themselves in your shoes and think through this and that. And then they put their arm around you and give you like the perfect loving advice. But in reality, what's probably happening if they're not giving you more time is you are not doing what they want you to do. And this can take a few different shapes, right? So one way that you could not be doing what they want you to do is maybe at like the most basic level of research ideas and topics, they are trying to get you to work on certain problems and you are trying to work on different problems. Some advisors won't give you that freedom at all. They'll just say, screw you, like work on my problems. I don't care that you're not interested. Like this is what I hire you to do it. Some though will give you the freedom. And in my opinion, the freedom can be a trap. Great, you're working on a problem your advisor doesn't care about. Listen to that again though. You are working on a problem your advisor doesn't care about. So that's reason number one, that I've seen people end up in situations where they feel like, oh, maybe my advisor like doesn't care about this. Well, you decided to do a thing they didn't want to do. So they'll let you do it. Good for you. Enjoy figuring it out on your own. Reason number two is that you're doing roughly what they want, but not in the way that they want. And I'm not saying you have to always do things the way your advisor wants, but if you're doing something and it's not working and you want your advisor to help you, but every time they tell you what to do, you do something else or you disagree, what are they supposed to do with that? Right? Like you have problems, you ask them for feedback, and you're not doing the thing. And almost everyone I've ever seen fall into this trap, myself included, you never realize it till like after, or it's someone else that finally tells you like, hey, like you're ignoring them. Because maybe you don't consider their advice to be like it's so beneath you or it's so wrong that you don't even consider it as legitimate advice. And you realize like much later, like maybe they say like, oh, you need to go talk to this person and this person. And you're like, that person doesn't know what they're talking about. I'm not going to talk to them. Okay, they don't know what they're talking about. But that's the advice you got, right? Or they might say like, run this experiment. And you're like, that experiment is not going to work. I've run something very similar. It doesn't work. Okay, great. You know, like, what are they going to do with that? They told you their perspective. This is the thing to run that'll tell you what to do. And you said, I already know that. So consider, even if it seems stupid, if you want their help, do the thing they're telling you to do. Now we're going to get into some things that I still consider kind of tough love, but a little less so. So there's also the fact of the matter, consider an advisor with many students and many different projects going on. Not all of those projects are going to win the best paper award at the best conference of the year. In fact, not all of them are going to get accepted to the conference or journal that they're being prepared for. Some of them are going to fail, and some of them maybe just aren't that important or that impactful. Maybe that project you scoped is like just good enough for that paper that you need, and it's beneficial for the community and it's a cool project, but like it's not, the scope isn't very big or the improvement's very incremental. And so your advisor knows that. And personally, what would you do if you were in their shoes? Let's imagine that you have 3 students. Student 1 is working on a project, and you think no matter what they do, it's just not going to work out. You've tried to get them to change things, but they wouldn't, and that project's just kind of doomed. Student 2 is preparing something, making great progress, and you think it will be a solid conference paper. Student number 3 is working on something kind of risky, and you've seen them make great progress, but you don't know if they'll finally be able to finish it. But you know, if they do finish it, this has a chance to be like to maybe get like some kind of spotlight recognition, or maybe even to contend for like best paper. Or you know that when you tweet the results about it, it's going to like boom, pop off, go viral. People are going to be talking about that paper with your name on it. As an advisor, which one of those are you going to give most of your time to? Now you might say, well, that's not fair. Like all 3 of us, we're all their student. If I was the advisor, I would be perfect and fair. And I would give all 3 of the students, the one that's failing, the one that's on track for something that's fine, the one that's like doing something risky and like high impact, I would give them all equal time and equal resources. Like, good for you. Like, become an advisor, do that, and then, you know, be the super fair person, and I'm sure your lab will do great, right? But in reality, the vast majority of people, especially people that get to the point where they're able to make those decisions, got to that point because they prioritize important things. I want you to notice something incredibly important about student and paper number 2. They're on track. That thing's going to get accepted, right? What is the impact of the advisor's time in that case? Are they going to get it more accepted? I mean, you could say, yeah, like everything's on a spectrum. They're going to put it in. Reviewers could list all kinds of weaknesses. They could patch like weakness 1 or weakness 2, or like improve the presentation a bit. But like, let's take our cynical hat off, like the hat of the cynic. Let's like discard it for a moment and say, okay, the core idea of this paper is decent and it's been validated properly experimentally. What do you want from your advisor at that point? A hug? Like I said, this part's still kind of tough love, right? Accept the fact that you benefit from good work coming from your lab. And if you don't like the fact that your advisor is spending more time on higher impact things, then once you finish this great paper that's going to be solid, work on a higher impact thing next. Scope out a project that's a little bit bolder, a little bit riskier, or like find something where you know and you can anticipate all the people that'll be interested, and you know it aligns with your advisor's interest and your expertise. Because another thing, I didn't really say this earlier super clearly, but like sometimes when your advisor pitches you a thing and you do another thing, you might pick a thing they don't know much about, where even if they tried to help you, they know and they can filter. They're like, okay, they think of a thing and then they're like, okay, that's dumb. And so they might only think of dumb advice for the thing that they don't know anything about. Do you want that advice? Do you want them to tell you like the dumb half-baked thing in their head where they don't have any context for what you're doing, right? And so I think it's important to be pragmatic. Like if you're working outside your advisor's area, or if you're just not really doing good work, or if you're doing just solid work but you don't really need their help, then what do you want their help for, really? You know, I said the video would be split between tough love and not tough love, but I think actually this whole thing is kind of tough love, because another thing I think I haven't hit hard enough is not only like, so I covered the case where your advisor gives you advice and you don't follow it. And I talked about doing a different thing, right? So I made it clear you're still doing things. You're still doing things. Well, there's also the case where you just aren't doing anything. Like they give you advice and you do nothing. And even I think a highly emotionally intelligent advisor that's like a very fair advisor, if they tell you to do a thing, and not only do you not ignore them and do something else, you just do nothing. What do you want? You want them to care more about your PhD than you do? Why would they? Why should they? And I think this brings us to a good thing to keep in mind. And sorry for the structure of the video. I don't really like scripting them. But your advisor's main responsibility, in my view, especially in their job as a professor, is to keep money moving across the desk. They need to pay you, and they need to pay themselves, right? So your advisor needs to make sure they run the lab in such a way that the grants continue to move. And actually, this does move us to a thing that's not so tough love, right? Your advisor's busy. They are super busy, and the thing they are most busy with, paying you, doesn't necessarily involve you. So your advisor, who's just trying to move money across the desk, who needs to pay you, needs to write grant proposals. They need to attend meetings for those grants. They need to network with other faculty members to to learn about more opportunities, to get better at proposing grants, to get better at doing these things. They need to network with connections in industry. They need to network with other funding connections. There's lots of things they have to do that have nothing to do with like talking to you. I would argue they actually are giving you their time. You know, they're not sitting in that grant meeting for 4 hours a week or whatever because they love it. They're sitting there to pay you. and they're sitting there so that you can work on projects and research. So try to keep that in mind. And this is especially true as the lab scales. Like if you're in a lab with like 8 of you, um, your advisor can support the 8 of you. Actually, 8's really big. Let's go smaller. You're in a lab with like 2 of you, right? Your advisor can support you with maybe one funding source. Okay, so like one application or lots of applications to get one grant, but then one set of meetings, one set of like markers of progress to keep track of, one set of external stakeholders to keep a nice relationship with. That's like for 2 of you. As soon as you increase to 4, double that. As soon as you increase to 8, times 4, times whatever, you get to the point where you see people that run 30-person labs, or if you look at like some Nobel Prize winner whose lab is like 50 postdocs, for example, their job is to pay those people and to keep the money moving, to convince the people that pay for science that they are doing good science. That's job number 1. The lab doesn't exist without that. Granted, you can't convince people that you're doing good science if you aren't. So job number 2 is very, very close to job number 1. Job number 2 is to do the good science that backs up number 1. But a lab can do all the good science in the world, and without money, it ceases to exist. So they need to move the money. And the good science, they can actually do a lot of the time without as much of their effort relatively. They hire good scientists to work with their lab, and they can hire good postdocs. And those postdocs and those scientists in a large lab will often be your main point of contact with your advisor. So for many of you, why doesn't my advisor give me more time? Well, look around you. How many of you are there? Are there 20 of you? What happens if your advisor meets with each of you for just 30 minutes a week? How do they keep track of you and like their downtime aside from that? Let's say there are 20 of you. If they meet with you for 30 minutes a week, that is 10 hours of their time just like talking to you. We're not talking about time spent on papers. We're not talking about time spent like of them being able to think about much other than what's in front of them, you. We're not talking about the grant meetings. We're not talking about the proposals. We're not talking about all the faculty obligations and meetings they have. We're not talking about most of them are teaching at least a course. We're not talking about the office hour for that course, right? We're just talking about like sitting down in a room with you. And that's quite a bit. So if there are so many of you, hopefully there is some structure set up. There exist postdocs, there exist scientists who you are supposed to spend most of your time talking to. And if that's not the case, then I would recommend, and I don't want to derail the whole video, but try to figure out how that hierarchy is implied. Like if you're a junior student, try to find an older student that seems to know what they're doing. Or try to find multiple students that know what they're doing and try to get help and try to see where you can learn from them and the things that they've gathered. Your lab wouldn't be so big if your advisor wasn't doing something well. So try to figure out what they're doing well and try to line yourself up with that, so to speak. The other practical things to consider, aside from the fact that your advisor is busy moving money across the desk, is that there are ways to talk to them and ways not to talk to them. Like if every time they actually do sit down with you and they're like, what did you do? You're like, well, and then you launch into this big rambly thing and you have no like prepared visuals. There's nothing like written. There's no structure. You just kind of ramble problems at them. That's really hard to keep track of as an advisor. It's hard to make it feel like you're making progress, and it's hard for them to put themselves in and say, okay, like there's the thing that we need to make better. So for many of you that say, why isn't my advisor giving me a lot of time? I would recommend you dramatically improve the quality of time you are spending with them. Are you making slides for them? Would those slides make sense if you weren't there to explain them? Are those slides going to come across clearly when they are on the toilet and that's the time they pull it up, right? Or when they're like at home watching TV and they're like, oh yeah, like let's look now. Are they going to come across in a mobile format on a phone or on a tablet? Know your own advisor in terms of like their style. If they do all work at work and they're always on the monitor, then sure, like send them stuff that takes a whole monitor. But if you know that your advisor is spending a lot of time taking calls with you at weird times, looking at stuff on their phone sometimes, then make sure that your slides have things that can be read and understood on the phone. And make sure you don't send the world's most complicated figure ever that's not even remotely self-explanatory and expect to get good advice from them to understand it. And try to put yourself in their shoes. How much time are you expecting them to have to put in to understand what you've done and to have a good suggestion? For you as the student, try to make that amount of time be as small as possible. Try to get them as quickly as you can from not knowing to suggesting. It's in your best benefit and theirs. I promise, even if your advisor is as hands-off as can be, if you get any time with them at all, if you put effort into making that time better, it'll get at least a little bit better, right? And that's why I said I'm being pragmatic here. Like that advisor, chances are if you confront them and you be like, you suck, you never sit with me, you never do this, you never do that, they're not going to change. Whereas if you take time yourself and make the time higher quality, that's going to get better, right? This video, by the way, leads into another video that I want to make, but I think I'm going to wait till like a few months when it's a little more relevant, which is like, how do I pick an advisor? Because I will say here, I think the most relevant quality of picking an advisor is, do you get along with that person? And hopefully the whole rest of this video before now kind of illustrates why. But I think it makes a pretty good point for it. Your advisor is a very, very busy person. It's hard for them to think too much about you, the person, and it's a lot easier for them to think about you, the person that outputs good research. And so do everything you can to output good research, and I promise things will get at least a little bit better. Thanks. Take care.